approximately 7:02. We have a roll call. Would you please lead us through a roll call?
Jonathan Grau.
Here.
David Roan.
Here.
David Downs. Ernesto Ruiz Gutierrez.
Here.
Joshua Ives. Lauren Mahalo.
Here.
Nicholas Mason. Patricia Whitrock.
Here.
Sean Olson.
Here.
Jason Branch.
Here.
Michael Flaherty Wilcox.
Here.
Thank you. Agenda item 3 is adopt the agenda of the June 11, 2018 Park Board agenda as presented. If anyone has conversation, so be it now, or any changes to the agenda can be made through a motion.
The only thing I would point out, Chair, is that item 8C should be omitted from the agenda just because that particular, those particular minutes weren't available to you.
And for those listening, that is item 8C is receiving planning commission minutes from May 9th, 2018. Okay, so noted.
I move we accept the agenda as presented.
I have a motion by Commissioner Whitrock. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Commissioner Mahalo. Any discussion? All right. All in favor of adopting the agenda as presented with the removal of 8C, the Planning Commission minutes, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries. Item agenda 4 is visitor presentation. Looking out to the crowd tonight, it doesn't look like we will have a visitor presentation today. It's pretty empty, so we will move right on to agenda item 5, approve the minutes of the May 14th, 2018 Park Board minutes. If everyone is comfortable, we can have a motion to, in a second, to approve.
I'll move approval.
A motion to approve the May 14th, 2018 park boards by Commissioner Olson,
Second.
second by Flaherty Wilcox. Any discussion? I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of the May 14th, 2018 park board meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. And it's approved. Agenda item 6, new business. 6A is future neighborhood park and Harvest West development.
All right, thank you. So this is more or less an update in that looking ahead out into the future within that development, the city has targeted a park to be part of that development through park dedication. It's about 12 acres in size, and this developer has brought forth the preliminary plans to the Planning Commission. Up to this point, it's been very just conceptual as it relates to the park as part of that development. And so right now, the primary focus is kind of the general layout of the park and kind of access into the park as one kind of looks at the housing within that development and the sight lines into the park. And so part of that packet I shared with you were some artistic drawings that the developer had provided. This kind of gives us a little bit of insight as to what that park access would look like. So looking ahead, I foresee this being a project for the park board sometime. I'm anticipating maybe in 2019 as the lots start to sell within that development. We would then take it a step further to start putting together some concept plans for what the park amenities would look like within there, and then go through a engagement process with the neighborhood residents there to get their input on what that park could look like. It's a really neat site. I think it's gonna lend itself to some playground structures and whatnot, but there's also a wetland within it. And then to the north is a pretty good section of woods that I think could also lend itself to some neat nature trails. And this development is the Harvest West development, and so just for reference, it would be north of Big Woods Boulevard on the western side of Chaska and to the east of Highway 212 there. And so there's already some development occurring in this area. It would just be a little bit further west of what's currently being developed. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention as it's, you know, the development is out in the public in terms of, with the Planning Commission in terms of the whole development, but kind of another exciting project for us to look forward to in the near future.
So Marshall, this would be defined as a neighborhood park as opposed to, say, a community park. So we
Correct.
kind of fall within those guidelines.
Yep. Yep, so it's a rather larger neighborhood park, but it still falls kind of under that definition of a neighborhood park. Yep.
Are there certain definitions that we have for those words?
I'm not exactly familiar with what the specific criteria are, but typically, yes, there's definitions based on size of park when it kind of goes from a neighborhood park to more of a, what you would call a community park, which would typically involve more athletic complexes and things like that
okay.
for,
Yeah, Michael, that's kind of how you see like a community park, it's usually there, it's going to have the capacity to hold more community level events. So you might have more play fields and things like that, whereas a neighborhood park's usually going to be a little bit more playground-like, you know, so I guess in short, that's kind of what it means.
But the definition doesn't have anything to do with who can access it or who maintains it,
Anybody can go there still,
Right.
yeah,
and it's still maintained by the city.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the other obvious difference is parking, right? So if a neighborhood park typically doesn't have a lot of parking because it's
Right.
intended general for people to walk there, versus if you look at our large parks that you would probably naturally consider as a community park, typically have parking lots and spaces because people are gathering in large groups from outside, so.
yeah.
Awesome, thank you.
Yep, and it's our goal within the city of Chaska to have a neighborhood park within about a half a mile of all residents, so.
Which I'll add, it's pretty cool. There was, the Chaska Herald had an article about the growth that Chaska continued experiencing. And on the Facebook page of Chaska Herald, someone had commented about, will there be more parks? And that caught my attention, and because I think one of the things that Chaska does a really good job is that exactly, it really built into, you know, we need to continue when we develop to make sure we have green space and parks and everything like that versus, you know, some communities you drive through and it's all houses and you can't find that green space in that park, so.
Well, yeah, there's very much defined policy on that.
Yep.
With every development, there's a certain percentage of that acreage that is going to be defined for parks.
Yep, which is great.
Designated for parks, I should say.
And for those of you who are new, they've always used a lot of neighborhood input from the neighbors in developing the park. It isn't just a case of where the decision is made and then the playground equipment is plopped down. The neighbors are very involved in the process. At least that's my understanding.
No, it is, and it
Yep,
always has
exactly.
been.
Yep.
And that does dictate kind of some of the parks. I mean, sometimes we've had more passive parks, because that's kind of been the feedback and that, and then others, you get your play sets and that type of thing. So, pretty cool process. Like I said, it's great that people are excited about growth, but also the park, we know that green space in parks and all that's being thought about as well. Any other conversation on agenda item 6A?
Do we get to involve the neighborhood in naming the park?
I don't know. Yeah. Very good question.
Might want to figure that out before 2019 rolls around.
We know that that's a goal of the board, and we're still in research mode, but yes,
Yeah,
that'll be
because we're gonna
something
need
we'll
time to name it.
bring back to the board as a naming process.
Yeah.
All right. 6B is the 2040 comprehensive plan.
Yeah, so that conversation there is a good kind of lead into this agenda item. So comprehensive plan, these are done every 10 years. It's actually state law for cities to do this. It's kind of done in coordination with counties and whatnot, and kind of vetted through the Metropolitan Council, and it's overall community development planning document that involves things such as land use and transportation to housing, utilities, and then typically parks, recreation, and open spaces is a chapter within that comprehensive plan as well. So we just had a kickoff meeting this past week, Wednesday, to start to plan for kind of a chapter that relates specifically to the parks and recreation and open space. It's going to be a little bit of a tight timeline. We will have essentially from now until, I believe, October is going to be the goal to bring back a draft of that chapter to the city council. So with that, at our next month meeting, I would like to have a work session in which I'll invite Hoisington Kegler, the consultant group that we're working with on this comprehensive plan, to join us in a work session prior to our board meeting next month to just kind of lay out the framework of how we're gonna accomplish kind of our section of this comprehensive plan. So it's a great way to kind of inventory what our existing facilities and parks and trails that we have, but also project into the future and establish kind of some guidelines and goals and initiatives as we think about development into the future. Which that's the exciting thing about Chaska, is there is still a lot of development to the west to be had, and it's a great opportunity to think about how Parks and Recreation plays an important role in the health and quality of life here in Chaska. So,
Would that be at 5:30 on the 9th then?
yep, we'll aim for 5:30 start time.
We may cover this at that work session, but when you say 2040, which doesn't sound like a real date, to be honest, is that like the plan starts at 24? Or how does it look? How does that? Is it like 10 years forward, 10 years after? Like, is that like from 2040 on? How does that date associate with kind of your mind and your thinking?
Yeah, I think it's us thinking about development up until 2040.
Okay.
So kind of between now and up to 2040.
Got it.
It starts to get harder to kind of predict things too far out, but like you say, even 2040, it seems hard to wrap your head around, but yep, so between now and 2040, looking at trends, we'll look at a lot of national trends through like the National Parks and Recreation. There's a lot of Parks and Recreation Association. There's a lot of this like benchmark data too. We'll look at some other comparable cities and, you know, based on population and things like that, where do we fall with the amenities we currently have, and then, you know, what is our focus looking ahead? And, you know, I think one thing we'll want to probably look at is just the overall system. You know, part of this is, you know, even looking at the neighboring cities and the interplay of just what's out there, and, you know, how we can look at kind of a regional system as well.
All right. Agenda item 7 is old business. 7A is Lions Park off-leash dog area. Discuss community feedback. Marshall, would you kick that off for us?
All righty. So lots of excitement happening around the off-leash dog area. And so what I'd like to do is just maybe start by reframing what we've done up until tonight to kind of get to where we are, just so everybody knows kind of the timeline of what's occurred. So looking back on April 16th, we had a joint meeting with the City Council. It was at that meeting where we reviewed a few of the sites that had been looked at in the past, and then also presented this new idea to take a look at Lions Park. And it was out of that meeting that the consensus was for us to focus some energy around this Lions Park site. And so with that, that's what we did as staff. We reached out to Hoisington Consulting Group and worked with them to put together some initial concept plans. And then from there, it was at our May Park Board meeting, we had a work session as a group with Hoisington to review those concepts. Out of that, there was a little bit of tweaking, but not too much. And then from there, on May 30th is when we held the community engagement event. The whole goal was to hold that out at Lions Park and invite the dogs, but unfortunately, as you recall, the weather was such that we had to make the call to move it indoors. So we did that. We held it within the lodge at the community center. And, you know, in my opinion, I think we had a great turnout. I estimate about 60 people came through that evening to review the concepts that we had put together and offer some feedback. As a result of that event, we ended up with about 40 surveys, feedbacks that were handed in at the end of that night. And then throughout the rest of that week and last week, we also made the concepts and feedback forms available at the front desk of the community center. So we got some additional feedback there. About 40 more surveys were turned in. And then lastly, in working with our communications manager, we were able to also get the concepts and information up on Facebook. So for those that weren't able to attend it in person, they had that opportunity to view the concepts on Facebook, and then there was a link to do an online survey there as well. It's getting a lot of great interest. I think the Facebook site had over 1,600 views, so that's wonderful to see.
Wow.
And we ended up getting about 100 more surveys that were turned back, that were submitted via online. So I feel we've done a good job at engaging the community and getting the feedback, which I was able to kind of condense some of that feedback into a spreadsheet for you to review over the weekend, along with a link to the online survey to see some of that feedback as well. And so I think tonight what I'd like to do is, you know, kind of turn it over to the board to essentially have a discussion, you know, surrounding the feedback and the process, and essentially advise on how you would like to move this project forward, you know, and what you would like to see to, you know, for us as staff to bring back at our next board meeting. So with that, I'll turn it over.
As you're all thinking about what you're going to say, I do want to thank staff for the creative way of getting that engagement. And if I look back at our last time we had it kind of open, it was more of a formal setting like this where people came in. We probably had 30-ish, 40, maybe 30 people attend that.
Every bit of that, I think, yeah.
You know, which was good at that time too. I think the flexibility of kind of an open house style, it would have been great. I heard that it would have been great to get the dogs, but we live in a state that, and the country in a weather pattern that's unpredictable. But I just want to thank you. I mean, I thought that was a great creative way of trying to approach the process, and then, to be honest, using social media and different ways to get that message out was appreciative. So whoever's combined effort that was with the staff, I thought it was noticed. It was great. It was great to get that feedback. So just wanted to share that. And then with that, any comments or things you heard?
Excuse me. Are you going to be able to share with us tonight the results of the surveys? Like the feedback that you got from the people who responded to the...
The online?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I could I can recap that for you if that would help.
I would find that very helpful.
Sure, okay. So I got it printed out here.
You think so, guys? You think that'd be helpful?
It was on the link too. I don't know if you got the.
Oh, I didn't see it on the link.
Oh, that's fine. It's probably fine for me to recap it too, and
No, I think it's good.
Did you see it on the link?
it might just lead into some of the discussion for you. So like I said, there was about 80 surveys that were turned in via kind of in-person, handwritten, and then as it relates to the online version, there were 96 responses. Of those, the first question was, in general, do you support the dog park? And 89 of the 96 said yes, which amounts to approximately 93% were in favor of it. And then on the flip side, that would equate to 7 that were opposed. Then there was, if you were opposed, there was kind of a comment section for people to provide some comment. I'm happy to read through each one of those if you want, but maybe we can just start with some of the discussion around that some of you might be prepared to have. Let's
I
see.
think it was notable that of the concerns in that last field, many of them, I haven't done added them all up, but I think a great deal of them had to do with other users of the park and not the park itself, right? People cleaning up after their dogs was a very big concern. And that has a lot to do, so that's not anything to do with the concept of a dog park at all, or the concept of this dog park, but would be a general concern, I think, that would apply to any dog park. And so it's incredibly valuable feedback, and I think it's something that, we'll have to watch for and do the best that we can with. But I think it's important for the purposes of this discussion to separate those concerns from concerns related to this concept versus concerns related to having a dog park at all. And I think what you've spelled out so far is that of the people who took the time to respond to the survey, there was a great deal of support for the idea of a dog park.
Yeah.
And then as you funnel it down, right, then there was, there are definitely people who had some concerns with this site. Some based on the site where it's located itself, others based on, I think it's too small, which is an interesting concern with the site too, right? And then I think you get down to, there are people who would have concerns with the dog park based on how well they think their citizens are gonna behave versus a concern with a dog park at all. So as you're looking through the comments, that was just something that really struck me.
Even one of the comments, this person was kind of angry, but I think she says in the end, well, I agree with the park, the dog park, even when you guys didn't do a really good job, but in the end, she just go but I like the idea to have a park, the dog park. So, and I was like, well, she's mad, but she's not. They want a dog park. It's just certain, concerns they have.
Right.
Yep.
I think the greatest value of this is that, you've done a great job, with the surveys and the people I spoke with at the front desk at the community center and the people that were very passionate being able to share their experiences. And there's lots and lots of experiences of people that have been to dog parks, and not only dog parks, public places. And all of that information that flows back into us, I would like to believe, is going to make us better prepared to put forth the best park we can. And so it's all good, but yeah, you're going to run the gamut of experience that people are going to have at these things, and you can't say that we're going to put forth a park that's not going to have. There's never going to be an incident-free park,
No.
and so. But you can prepare yourself the best you can, and you can put forth the best park, and you can prepare the best you can, and then you go forward from there.
I think another thing is, we've said before, the site has always been the issue. We've looked at so many sites, and it just seems like this is the site that best meets the needs of the community. That's an opinion, but I've been around a long time.
Well, I think I would agree based on, I have a much shorter tenure with the park board than some of the rest of you who were here for rounds 1 through 5. but I think given the proximity to the trails, given that it's land that the city already owns, right? Given that there's already plumbing and buildings on the land, I heard a lot of feedback that the bathrooms need to be updated, so that's a granted, right? We knew that from our prior discussions and fact finding, but that came through loud and clear at the open house event. So given all of those pros, and when you consider the challenges that we've seen with some of the other sites that we've looked at, the people that I spoke with at the open house, for the most part, were very much in favor of the concept. I think you have a little bit of self-selection there, right? The people who were gonna come and bring their dogs and the whole thing were probably people who are really jazzed about this and excited to come and see the concepts. But I mean, we have definitely also heard from, and we've gotten letters, there was people who came to that to express their opposition to the idea of a park or a park in that location. But from my vantage point, the feedback from the community that has been spoken to me verbally, that we've seen through the surveys that I heard at that event, has been very much in favor of not only a park, but a park at this site.
And I think it will revitalize Lions Park. That's my neighborhood park, living across the street. And I think the park, you know, I'm not criticizing anyone, but I think it's gotten a little shabby with the shelter and the bathrooms. And as I understand it, the Lions organization will be involved in the process too of kind of spiffing up the park.
So, you said you live near the park?
Across the street.
There were not that many comments, but there were a few comments from people who said they live near the park who said that the hockey rinks get used a lot and they were upset to see them go away.
They do not get used a lot. We have the data on that, and
Oh,
I
okay.
look out my window regularly, and I keep hoping I'll see a skater or two. They're not widely used.
And there was also the comment of the summertime use of that said skating rink as well, for whether it's, you know, floor hockey or
People
ball
or
hockey,
something.
Yeah.
whatever it was. Anything summertime use that,
You know, what I see, I don't see too much of that either. What I see is really popular in Lions Park is pickleball. It's just the hot spot for pickleball, and the tennis courts aren't
Just tennis
used too
courts.
much for tennis.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Question for Marshall, would they actually schedule those hockey rink spaces in summertime for, would it be forgive me, broom ball, or
Yeah, I'm not aware of any,
is that something
we don't
get
do any programming
programmed?
in there.
Yeah.
No, so I think there potentially could have been just random play within the hockey rink during the summer.
But in the wintertime,
There.
it gets flooded and is available for hockey. Now, does it get scheduled for hockey then?
Nope, it's just all recreational.
It's just-
It's just pickup
Stop
games.
in,
Pickup
pick
games,
up,
okay.
yeah, play, skate or.
Okay, so it's not like we would be
We're not losing
eliminating,
a program.
you know, a sheet of ice that is, you know, programmed and scheduled for use.
Exactly.
To follow up on that then, so if we've got a handful or two of people in the neighborhood who like to use that for pickup games, what other areas are available to them that aren't scheduled in the winter for hockey? Right, so it might not be something they can walk to, but, and I don't know this off the top of my head, so this is honestly my question, is if we're taking a resource away that's used even by a handful of people, what can we point them towards that would still be available to fill that capacity, even if it meant they might have to drive?
Well, there's other outdoor rinks at Community Park. And I know, I believe the one in Community Park has a concrete pad, doesn't it? So,
warming house.
so if they're using it for roller hockey or whatever in the summer, they could go there and do that.
Good question.
The idea to multi-purpose that parking space and continue to utilize that as an ice skating rink in the wintertime, is that something that's still on the table, or is that? So basically, it's a pickup game or two in the summertime that may possibly happen, that is kind of, is what we're talking about. Because wintertime, it would be a
There's
skating
still a
rink.
rink
Gets
there.
returned to
Right.
being a rink, right?
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
okay.
So there is still a rink available there in the winter
All
for
right,
those
okay,
pickup
I
games.
thought that was the
Mhm.
difference.
Thank you for reminding me of that.
Yeah, I appreciate that conversation. I saw that comment too, and then wanted to bring up the fact that, we have looked at the usage of those two rinks, and largely they're not used to the high level. You got the data, and you got the neighborhood look on, which is
Neighborhood watch.
the neighborhood watch, which is great. Because, I think that it's not something we took lightly to take out a rink in the wintertime as well,
Yeah.
to be in the grass one. There's also the conversation about the grass one. It's obviously harder to keep frozen, keep ice. It was in repair, it would needed repair regardless because of the boards and everything like that too. So I did comment on that. The only other feedback, the two things that I had for feedback that I heard and kind of saw in here, other than the picking up after your dog, which is a noble cause that we all should take on. I had some questions about flea, tick, mosquito ideas. Flea and tick, I think you as a dog owner yourself, you try to take care of that yourself with remedies. The mosquito one's interesting, right? I'll be honest, when that question got asked me, I hadn't thought of that, right? Because if you're out there walking in that wooded space, granted you can put bug spray on too, but that was an interesting question and I didn't, really know, like, we don't naturally spray all our parks for mosquitoes. Sometimes events are held. I was next to Public Works at the session, so I asked him, and he said, no, if there's a special event and they request it, they can have that done. But typically the city's not spraying parks for mosquitoes. And I don't think it'd be any different in this case. I don't know if you make an argument to do it on this one, you could make a lot of arguments to do it at all the parks, and then it's a little bit of a slippery slope. But that was honestly something I hadn't even thought of when you think of the wooded area that was brought to my attention. The other thing that was interesting feedback was the ability to have water inside the gate. In particular, we looked at the map, and the person who gave me that feedback agreed that, it's cost prohibitive to move it to the big one, because you'd have to go through the creek and I don't know how. But potentially that small space where the hockey rink is. And his comment was that if dogs need water, you're inside, you have to leash, go out, fill it up, come back in, that it's nice to have water potentially on the inside. He said the way around it, he's experienced from his dog park around the city, is that people will bring jugs in, fill jugs in, have them sit there. And then sometimes watering dishes just get left there kind of as a community. I think it's worth exploring what it would be to get water in there personally, because I worry about the appearance of water jugs sitting there, right? It's useful, but they collect there. Does that look like, for the person who's not a dog owner, drives by, sees these jugs sitting there and they think it's trash when it's actually used,
Right.
but because it's not that far away from where the water is, so I would be curious. But that was something interesting too about getting water inside the gate for the dogs to be able to drink and fill up dishes. But
It's interesting. So I went and checked out, I did homework yesterday. You'd be very proud of me. So I went and checked out the new trails that the Arboretum has for dogs, which are leashed only. It's not a free run area, so very different from what we're talking about here. But there are now 2 trails within the Arboretum, if you pay an extra fee on your membership, that you can take dogs on these trails. And there were waste stations all through the trails. There's 2 versions, a smaller loop and then a bigger loop. So there's garbage cans all the way through the trails, but the only water was at the entrance. There was a big bowl there that I think either the Arboretum had put there or somebody had left there, much like you're talking about, kind of the communal dish or whatever. But I went into it with my little my little soft-sided doggy bowl, whatever, and a bottle of water, because I figured I didn't know how long the trail was, and if we got out and around, I kind of came prepared. And I would think a lot of owners probably would, especially as you get into it becoming a habit, right? Then you know what you've got to bring with you. For instance, I won't do the Arboretum trails again in sandals. That was important learning yesterday. But so you just learn those things through repeat use, right? So I think the water is an interesting question. It would be worth exploring what the cost would be. But I also think that if people know that they're going to go out there and play for an hour, most pet owners are probably bringing water with them.
Yeah, I agree, because I walk my dog, and Victoria Park, dog park is big, and the people, and the front end is outside of the gates. So, and it's a little jog there, and everybody knows it's like a common sense when you got there. So you know you're gonna run with your dog, you bring water, you keep it with you, you don't leave anything behind. And I mean for me to, you know, the issue before was spending money in the dog park. So I don't think personally we need to put water inside. Because for me, I mean, I walk my dog and I saw a lot of dog owners and nobody complains about it. I mean, some people just want to be like, you know, right here is water, here is water. I mean, it's a dog park.
Right.
You know, your dog has to run and get tired. And you get prepared. You get your jog, like, you know, and it's not expensive to buy those things for the dogs. So for me, the cost to just put water inside of the park, I think is gonna be like an issue for us.
Yeah.
We used to spend a lot of time at Battle Creek Park, and which is over in St. Paul, and there's no plumbing there, so everyone walks in their water. And it kind of feels like you're bringing something to a potluck. Like it sort of feels like you're contributing to the park when you bring your water because all the dogs drink it, and you fill it out there. So I think it would be worth seeing if the city could put in some sort of like permanent bowl or something that's, because otherwise it's like just everyone's leftover bowls that sort of show up and those kind of gather. But if we can put something nicer in there that's not plumbed but has plumbing but is there to fill up, and maybe something to make it easier at the drinking fountain that is going to be put in there, make it easy to fill up a bottle or some bigger container there so that you could walk over.
That's a really good point. Like not the little trickle water fountain.
Right, exactly.
Something where you could quickly fill up a bottle.
Yeah, like a larger spigot.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
Pretty smart.
But also keeping in mind that if I'm out there playing tennis or pickleball and I get thirsty, maybe I want a drinking fountain right there. I don't want to have to go outside for my pickleball game to get a drink of water.
Right across the bridge. Good conversation. Anything else that needs to be added or said about what they heard or what you read?
Yeah, I had one thing as I was reading through all the comments, and then the letter that greeted us today. The smell of the dog park came up in a number of the comments, and I was wondering if there's anything in particular that the developers had mentioned about that, or if there's really anything that can be done. Sort of just a natural part of having a park, but I don't know if there's special materials or hoping for rainstorms all the time or something like that we can do.
Yeah. That's a good question. I took note of that too. That seems to be, of the concerns,
right.
One that seems to be kind of primary. I've kind of, subjectively thought about it, just in my experience going to a dog park, and I guess it doesn't really jump out at me as something I notice when I go to a dog park. So I'm just a little bit questioning maybe the validity of the concern. I think I see where it is a natural thing to think about on the front end, but I'm not sure if that is ultimately reality. But some of the stuff I've looked at does have to do with maybe just the materials. And one thing I learned is actually it may be related more to the urine rather than picking up of the poop. So I know some dog parks are moving a little bit more to like crushed lime and granite into the areas that, where the turf might get worn out, rather than the mulch, because mulch tends to maybe kind of absorb that urine over time. The trade-off with that though is as you build up more of that kind of crushed rock, so to speak, is it can dry out and then get dusty. So if it gets windy, then you're kind of dealing with dust on the site. So but one thing I was, formulating in my head is maybe that's something we look at around the kind of perimeter of the fencing, kind of like at a baseball field, a little warning track around the fence, so to speak, and maybe we could put in some strategic fire hydrants along the way to kind of nudge dogs to urinate kind of in that area where there's some more absorbent material rather than in the grass. But there again, you know what, we're not gonna be able to control the animal behavior altogether, but it's something we could potentially be mindful going into some of the design.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My anecdotal experience is that it's usually around the entrances, just as dog behavior, they, like, as they're coming into a new place.
Yep.
And like, that's always seems to be the worst area, so if we can concentrate, like, if we have to make a choice, we have to, like, concentrate in one area, that seems like
Yep.
a sensible place to do crushed gravel or whatever it is.
Yeah.
You're reminding me now that at the entrance to the Arboretum trails yesterday, they had a big old red fire hydrant.
Yeah.
There's also the application of lime too, you know,
Oh, okay.
so that could be potentially coordinated with the park maintenance department to do on occasion would be to apply some lime to kind of offset the nitrogen that is what occurs with the urine and the feces if left, you know, for too long, you know, and then watering it down on occasion.
And I think by and large, you're gonna have, you know, responsible dog owners. There's always gonna be, you know, some things that slip through the cracks and don't get bagged up, but having, you know, good sealed containers, which I would expect we would have, just to make sure that, you know, whatever gets collected and gets put into the bin is, you know, not there to waft out into the neighborhood. And, you know, I think have a good schedule for getting those things dumped.
Anything else? Well, what I haven't heard is anything that should prevent kind of us recommending to continue to move forward and exploring some of those future things and continue to push the ball. I think there's excitement. I think the number one question, other than some of the obvious ones, was when can this get done, right? So, you know, anything we can do as a group or you need from us to continue to push the concept and, you know, eventually get it to the city council hands. I think it's pretty clear from the comments and see there's a lot of need, and I don't see any reason why we should not continue down the path that we're headed with this.
Okay. Is there anything specifically you can think of that would be helpful for you informationally to have? Looking ahead, I mean, I know one thing that I intend to do is put more cost estimates to this. So if nothing else, that could be our next park board meeting, would be maybe an attempt at a preliminary proposal that would define this site a little further along with some cost estimates. And we could see where that lands that evening, if we feel comfortable that it's, you know, acceptable and thought out enough to go ahead and make a recommendation. That could be a possibility. Otherwise, it would just be that next opportunity to kind of keep honing in on it. It may raise some additional questions, and then that would just give us some more insight to continue to put more thought into it, which would then mean it would just come back in August. So I think, in my mind, I think there would be a goal within the next couple of months where we would be ready to make a recommendation, or I would make it available for you to make that recommendation.
The cost estimates are really the final piece, I think.
I think so too.
I mean, that's the only information that I
that
don't
would-
have yet.
Yep.
Right, because that would include the redoing of the bathroom, really defining the boundaries with the fencing.
Well, I think the Lions are involved in that, though. I think, you know, this is kind of a joint effort, isn't it?
I'm not sure. I think we're striving for that, but I think if anything, I remember there was a comment at our work session with city council around some of the revitalization of the restrooms and concessions kind of on the other side of the park as well, and so that might be where we would look to see if the Lions
Yeah, that's what I
would
meant.
be able to contribute. Yep. So just kind of around all the enhancements as a whole. You know, then another thing to note is we do technically have another opportunity for additional engagement in the fact that we're having a Bark in the Park event on Wednesday, July 27th, coming up at Fireman's Park. I think it may be something where we can just continue to have the concepts available and just keep the community discussion going. You know, I think the more input throughout, we can continue to learn and make adjustments as needed.
No, I'd encourage us to, keep those channels of communication open, with the public and continue to gather the feedback. It's all good, for good or ill, it's all good. And so whether it's, having those surveys available there at the front desk at the community center, or, continuing to remind people that this is a work in progress. Kevin, out there, you can, get some reminders there on the Facebook page that, that we're still seeking input as we go along here, and we want to hear from everybody.
To piggy on that, I think some of obviously the stuff that's in our formal packets available to the public, but some like those SurveyMonkey stuff, I'm a big believer if you're gonna ask people for feedback, we should give that feedback back to them. So the channels that we got that feedback, I'd love to see, this report as well as kind of the SurveyMonkey feedback. I mean, it's all anonymous, there's nothing really, other than I think the one has the SurveyMonkey has the mailing list, which we probably wouldn't want to make public.
Yeah.
But I think it's always good to, if you're going to ask people for feedback, to be able to share that feedback and say, here's what we heard, which then will spur more comments or questions and kind of continue that feedback. So I would encourage, other than just hoping someone goes out and checks our packet, to figure out ways to broadcast that message so people can see the feedback that we got for them. So, good.
That's a very good point. And the other thing, so then to piggyback on your piggyback, is I will say how much I've appreciated the civil nature of the feedback that we've gotten so far, pro and con. We've gotten letters, we've gotten emails, we've seen Facebook posts, everything, and I think with the exception of maybe a rare occurrence here or there, I think people have really been very civil and thoughtful with their feedback, and I very much appreciate that.
And going back to the Bark in the Park, I misquoted. It's June 27th, not July. It's coming up here in a couple weeks.
Correct the record.
It's not going to rain that night? You're on record saying that.
Night. Yes.
Can't move that to the lodge.
All right, 7B is an update on City Square West task force update by Nick Mason. Commissioner Mason was unable to attend tonight, but I do, we talked about, I will read the letter that was included, and then we can kind of ask questions and look at some of the diagrams. So I will read that now. Report to Park Board June 14th about City Square West Task Force. The City Square West Task Force had one meeting since update on April 9th Park Board meeting. That task force meeting was April 25th. The city's consultant, Hosenting Kugler Group, presented two revised concepts marked Concept A and Concept B. They're included in your packet tonight. As you will see, Concept A does not include a library, but Concept B does include a library. The consultant also handed out its summary of task force members' responses to the four concepts A through D, that were presented at the task force meeting in March. A copy of the consultant's summary also is in your packet tonight. During this meeting, each task force member reported about concerns, questions, or comments from the group that the member represented. I presented your mentioned during the April 9th Park Board meeting. The April 20th Task Force meeting had two significant results. First, the task force consensus was not to include a library on this site. This consensus, which I supported, was done with the enthusiastic support of the County Library Director, Heidi Hawks, who is a task force member. Several other downtown locations were reviewed as a potential library locations, but City Administrator Matt Podorowski would not identify them in a public setting. The other result was a brief discussion about a hotel market study performed by another consultant to the city. The study found the area hotel market is saturated, as shown by occupancy rates below 50%. So a hotel in Chaska is not needed, and the economics would not work for a hotel operator. The next City Square West Task Force meeting is tentatively scheduled for June 27th, which is Bark in the Park. End of report, Nick Mason. Questions, comments, clarification?
I guess one thing, when I see this, I guess I'm wondering what, in terms of the library, what are they, why would, I guess I don't, what is the library looking for in terms of a site that they're thinking this is not a good location, and what are they looking for in a new location? I guess I don't understand that, so I don't know why they're so enthusiastic about not being on this site, because this feels like this would be a pretty good site for a library to me. You know, being in a new redeveloped block in the heart of downtown that's gonna have parking on site. So I guess I'd be interested to hear what they're looking for in a library site.
Forgive me, because I might be confusing two different things. I think, didn't the library, as part of this concept, involve reusing some of the bank? That was concept A.
I think that's correct.
Okay,
Yeah, I think that was in maybe one of the previous.
that was in one of the, in concept A.
If that's the one I think First Nick was in favor of, because it overlooked, City Square Park.
Mhm. Right.
So I guess I'm not necessarily questioning it, I guess I'm just sort of curious what they're looking for in a site then.
Yeah, I agree.
So we can, I mean, obviously it's not our job to find them a site, but I guess I'm wondering, I'm just
I'd
trying
be
to think,
curious to
I'm
learn
trying
more,
to
too.
think mentally where else it would go in downtown Chaska
Yeah.
then, but.
So I actually sit, to jump in here, I actually sit on the Employee Engagement Committee for
Mhm.
this task force as well. It's a separate one from the one that Nick sits on. And there was a lot of discussion on, because of the cost going into the redevelopment site itself, and was it ideal to put a library there that's really not gonna help generate some revenue for the site in the redevelopment process, as well as there was also concern about, when you look at the different options that are on here, traffic flow. There was a lot of discussion on 4th Street traffic is pretty busy, right around the 3 to 4:30 timeframe with a ton of
Mhm.
buses, as well as the normal 41 traffic. So there was a little bit of concern of having that be such a busy family place during those times of day that maybe it would be better to find a location that didn't have that high traffic count during the day. And I believe the sites that Podrosky was talking about are in better locations that both the library and the city felt might be better options.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right,
That was
thanks.
really useful.
Any other comments? I have two. I was actually surprised. I was good. It was good data to get that about the hotel market.
Mhm.
I was a little surprised, just because I look at the city of Chaska as kind of an up-and-coming event destination with some of the wedding venues that we're starting, with the curling center and the event center downtown and all that, and thing. And then some of the other ones that are being up in kind of the north side with the farmstead and everything like that. And you think about it, so that's what kind of surprised me, because you think about it, it's like, okay, if you have out-of-town guests to come to a wedding, where are they staying? And they're probably not staying in Chaska, which seems silly, because why would we want them to stay in Chaska? So I'll just point out that I learned something there, because I obviously didn't have the data and everything like that, but that surprised me a little bit.
I was
'cause,
very surprised by that,
Um,
because your options in Chaska are primarily the Super 8 and the Best Western.
Yeah, which is North, I can't remember, it's not technically a Best Western.
Oh, it's
anymore.
not Best
Yeah, it's,
Western anymore,
forget what it's called. Or there's Oak Ridge, which
which
is,
is high-end.
people forget about as well, because it's up there. So yeah, I was surprised. I mean, like I said, I'm not questioning the study or anything like that, but that's something I've thought of as you continue to watch venues for like weddings. And obviously you'd want to capture them in the city of Chaska versus they go to the wedding and have a great time and then they have to get get transportation somewhere else.
So one of the, I can comment on that one
Yeah,
too, if you don't mind. One of the things that was also learned in that study, for a hotel to feel it's really feasible for them financially, they will only go into a community that has a lot of business traffic and
Because otherwise you're only getting weekend guests.
during the
right?
week.
The business folks are the
It's
ones
so much
coming.
more than just that weekend event. They
Right.
need to have those rooms full during the week. And they just didn't feel comfortable that Chaska had that.
From what I understand too, it was somewhat of a research on the neighboring cities that do have other hotels, and
Yeah.
they're not seeing the volume in those
Not
cities.
catching your audio.
They weren't seeing the volume in those cities, and they're even a closer ring into the downtown area, so I think there was just a unfortunate reluctance to advocate for a hotel further out even.
That's why you do the studies. It's great.
Yep.
Right.
It's great
You'd
use
rather
of the
know that
study.
now than 5 years from now when you have an empty hotel sitting there.
Yep. The second thing, and this will get passed on to Nick through the notes and through everything like that, I just want to, I've continued to kind of keep it close to my heart, that I continue to really hope that the city continues to work with the current occupancies of that space. The City West stuff excites me. It interests me. I think it's a great addition to downtown. But with that comes loss. And I know in the prior meeting when Nick was here, he talked about the city trying to work with them to relocate them. We'll see how that works out. But that is a pretty good inclusive piece to our community that we live in, Chaska. And I worry about that. That eats a little bit at me because you want the best of both worlds, and sometimes that doesn't always occur. But I continue to encourage the city to look and work and try to figure out how that makes sense to work with those businesses and owners of those businesses down there and their employees as well. Anything else to add? I think I was last.
I guess I did have one other thing.
Sure.
I'm glad to see the residential component of it has stayed. I think the combination of this along with some of the other new apartment buildings like out by Big Woods Boulevard, I think that's really critical towards ensuring the success of the downtown business district is getting more people living downtown. So I think between those and this, and hopefully there'll be some other opportunities as well to kind of infill some additional density in downtown will be a very good thing.
Great add. Agenda item 8, other business. 8A is department happenings.
All right, so this is my opportunity to share some of the other exciting things going on in Parks and Recreation. So I thank you for the opportunity to do that. Looking back, we had a very successful kids fishing clinic on June 2nd. That was a partnership that was with the Chaska Area Fishing with Friends, the DNR, and the Carver County Sheriff's Department. It's estimated that there was about 62 kids in attendance there. Although it was kind of a rainy day that day as well, there was a lot of great activity within the event center. So that was a successful event. Really starting to gear up for a lot of the music series here in Chaska. So this past Friday evening kicked off the Friday concert series. It was the Carver County Arts Consortium CD release party. And heard from Tessa, who planned that went very well. And then tomorrow kicks off the kids concert series. That'll be at 10:30 in the morning over at the Fireman's Park with the Bazillions. And it's going to be followed by a beach bash party as well. It's looking like beautiful weather tomorrow, so there should be a good turnout. And then this coming Wednesday kicks off the Wednesday concert series as well, and that's from 6 to 8:30 p.m. This particular coming Wednesday, there will also be an ice cream social. So treats are going to be handed out by the Chaska Police Department, and it will be the Tuxedo Band playing that evening. So lots of exciting music happening
Park
here in
board ready.
Chaska. Planning continues for the Curling Night in America event. So as you may have seen, the official press release just came out this last week. And tomorrow will be a pretty big day for some other staff and I, along with the U.S. Curling Association, World Curling Federation, and NBC Sports, respectively, are going to have some staff on site tomorrow morning and throughout the day to kind of finalize their site survey and then really start to dig in on some of the details and the planning for that event. From there, we anticipate a weekly conference call leading up to the event to plan for that. So that's going to be exciting. That's going to be in the end of August, Monday through Wednesday, the 26th through the 28th. So anticipate a lot more information coming out on that as we learn more.
Is
Do they
that
sell-
going to be a spectator event? Are people going to be able to get tickets to go in and watch it live?
Absolutely. So over the course of the 3 days, there will be three draws each day. So I believe it'll be about a 9 o'clock in the morning, a 2 in the afternoon, and then an evening.
Okay.
So we definitely will be looking for ways to get people in attendance to kind of round out that TV experience part of it.
Okay.
Yep.
Good.
That's what I was gonna add. I saw some of the comments that people were wondering if they could buy tickets when it was out on the social medias of the
Yep.
home, so, cool.
Yeah, we're anticipating the evening will be the hot ticket. So, you know, we'll see how we position that, and then, you know, the morning and afternoon ones, we may have to get creative to get people there. But I think it's gonna be a real exciting event, and we'll be able to involve the business community. We're hoping to reach out to the schools and really rally the area to come view this spectacle. Let's see here, fitness. Now that it's nice out, we positioned some of our popular fitness classes out at Fireman's Park as well. So on Friday mornings, you can experience PiYo in the park. That's from 8:30 to 9:30 in the morning. And then we offer flow yoga on Wednesday evenings from 7:15 to 8:15 in the evening. And then a couple of other items that didn't actually make your printed list. We're currently working with the Chaska High School, and specifically their varsity hockey team, varsity and JV hockey team, to remodel and actually do a kind of a reconstruction of their locker room facilities within the community center. And so essentially what we'll be doing is taking the existing girls and boys varsity locker room and knocking out the wall that separates them to make it into one large locker room space that will then house, we're not sure which one yet, but boys or girls, both varsity and JV in one large locker room. And then we got creative with another space within the ice arena, which is essentially like a courtyard that contains our air chiller system, and it's got a gas meter in there, but it does have 3 exterior walls. We're gonna relocate the chiller and the gas meter outside, take advantage of the 3 walls, and just construct a roof to build out another locker room that would house the opposite gender locker room. So their programs are really growing, and we're just at that point where we want to work with the school district to kind of bring up the level of their locker rooms. So we've been working with a construction manager on that, and the estimate will be going in front of the council meeting next week, and essentially we'll just be seeking their approval to go out to bid. And the way that we're looking to set that up is the city will finance the construction costs on the front, side of it, but then we're gonna work with the school district with some sort of a payback over time for the use of that. And then an update on the Chaska, Chanhassen mountain bike trails, that group that had come before us a couple of months ago. Progress continues with that group. They are really close to formalizing as a nonprofit. They're actually just waiting on their paperwork to come back to them. They've had some opportunity with the weather being nice now to walk the site and lay out some a little bit more detailed trails on the site. I think they're estimating about 3.5 to 3.7 miles worth of trail within that area. Looks pretty cool. There's kind of a main trail where if you stay on it, you do a loop, but then there's about 4 or 5 kind of offshoots where you can kind of take a little tangent and maybe be a little bit more challenged, but then loop back onto that main trail. Still working through some of the options for insurance and still kind of working on the process, so to speak, with MnDOT and the whole limited use permit and what we still need to prepare for that, for them to get that limited use permit signed. So just a few more things that we need to get done, but I anticipate that coming back hopefully in July or August to the park board meeting with some more detail to be able to make a recommendation there as well. Another great thing that's come out of working with this group is their interest in also enhancing the existing pump track that's over at Lions Park. So actually, as you look at the site for the off-leash dog area that we're looking at, just south of that southerly hockey rink, there exists a pump track that I believe over time just wasn't being used, and the dirt's kind of flattened, and they believe that they can get some more activity on that site just with the increased popularity with mountain biking that's occurring. And so we're working with Public Works to essentially deliver them some extra dirt, and through their volunteers, they're willing to kind of reshape that pump track and bring a little more life back to it. So it kind of gets some more rollers and some berms in there to give the kids an area to ride. And they really see that as an opportunity to, get more of that younger youth to kind of have a practice area, and then from there, a lot of those skills transfer to those off-trail systems as they grow and maybe be kind of a feeder system into their mountain bike team for the future.
Cool.
So, lots of exciting things going on.
Thank you. Other business under 8B is the receive city council meetings. Typically, we receive them, and if there's anything in particular that we have a question on, we can do that now, but more of a moment to receive and reflect, but not necessarily any formal discussion unless something jumped out to anyone.
I'll say that the only thing that jumped out at me from that was the donation from the Ridgeview Medical Center towards the Veterans Park downtown, which was very nice to see.
I'll move we receive them.
Don't think we need a formal motion for that. I appreciate it. All right, that brings us to 9, round table. I don't know where I started last time. I think I started on that one. So we'll start with Commissioner Olson first. Round table to reflect is kind of an open, if you have anything to share, add, second, if you thought of something on a different topic, but it's kind of just open. Not required to say anything, obviously, but it's open, and we'll kind of just go through the table.
I had 3 items. The first, I guess, was kind of an update on the construction at Veterans Park. I know they've been working a lot over there. How's that coming, and is everything on track, and will things be complete? I think the intent was to get everything complete this year, right?
Yeah, so I think the goal is to have completion somewhere around the end of October, somewhere in there. It's my understanding things are moving along. I actually have been invited to start participating in the weekly construction meetings, so I'm gonna start to do that beginning next week, so that way I'll be a little bit more prepared going forward with some updates, but as far as I know, it's going as planned.
Okay, good. Second item, just a note, Sunset Park, bunch of the new signage is up, including the metal sign by the flags, that is up. And I know we're working with the county on the ones that are on Engler itself. There's also a sign that the city put up, which is on Prescott Lane at the corner of Engler. That still says no access to Veterans Park, so we need to get that sign updated. It's actually on the light pole on the island near the Points West Monument sign.
Thanks for pointing that out.
Mhm.
We'll take a look at that.
And then the third item, just kudos. My son started the baseball program last Friday, and so I'm volunteering to coach, and just been really impressed by the way Aaron and Sydney have that program put together, and all the support they're giving to the coaches there. Just a great packet of information. They got the practice plans for all 6 weeks, and just pick it up and go. It's really about as easy as teaching 5- and 6-year-old kids how to play baseball, so as it can be. So just a great job by both of them on that program. So just wanted to bring that up.
Thank you.
That's all I had.
Just one, with the Curling Night in America, will there be any opportunity as for the Ryder Cup for community volunteering, or any opportunities like that with the event for the community to get involved, volunteer type? You know, I know when you had the Ryder Cup here, there was an event down at Fireman's Park, and they asked the community, for volunteers to, take over and run maybe the beer garden at one time. Is there gonna be any opportunity for the community to get involved in?
I anticipate there will be, and,
Right.
hopefully we'll probably learn a lot more about that tomorrow.
Okay,
Up to this point, it's been pretty general,
okay.
just kind of identifying us as the host site and getting the teams identified and getting the press release going, and so I think tomorrow will really be the kickoff to understanding the variety of details that will go into that event. But,
Okay.
it'll be a big event, so absolutely, I see there'll be opportunity for
Great.
community involvement.
Good.
Yeah.
That was, something I had.
Nothing for me?
I had 2 items. One was a follow-up on the mountain biking, the mountain bike group. I was wondering if when they came to us, maybe in like March, they had a really ambitious timeline to get stuff going in that area this summer, so that they could capitalize on the season, I guess. Are we able to? Are they able to do anything in that site besides kind of mark the trails? Are they able to start using it yet? Are we gonna help them get as much time as they can in the season?
Yeah, I mean, without the actual permit in place and the council approval, they really can't be on the site.
Okay.
For a variety of reasons, and, we're just kind of working through the process to as quickly as we can, but, I'm appreciative of their ambition, but I've also, being mindful of, the off-leash dog area that's before us and some of these other projects, but, we're continuing to have regular meetings, and, I know they're making good progress on their end, and, we're making good progress on ours. So, like I say, I anticipate, you know, the potential of coming back even in our July meeting to be able to bring back that information and move that forward. Yep.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, that, moving through all those different, I mean, they're moving pretty fast. We're having to work with a city and a county and MnDOT and.
Oh, yeah.
And another city and, you know, all that.
Go formalize as a board. And
Yeah, and all that, yeah.
Yep, so they've been just a great group to work with and have done a lot of homework on their end to make, you know, it easier on staff's end, so really appreciate it.
Yeah. The other thing I will mention is that I attended the work session, the city council work session on May 21st, prior to their meeting, and the topic was a presentation from the Par 30, right, golf course. They had a really great presentation about the kind of future of that golf course. They're seeing across the nation, they're seeing a need for what they call accessible golf or inclusive golf, so golf that's adapted for people with physical or developmental disabilities. And at the same time, they're seeing some opportunities in their schedule where there isn't as much play happening just from the business they already have, and they need to make improvements in the life cycle of that course. So they came to the city with a very nice proposal to have the city council and the city commit the same amount of money that they otherwise would have committed to keep businesses normal, but then they're also partnering with a nonprofit group to do some major fundraising. And the vision for the golf course is a course that's like flexible in the way that it's laid out, so they can transition part of it to group classes. And then it's designed physically, the training and all that is designed for people with physical and mental disabilities to be able to play golf, to learn and play golf. And a facility designed that way from the ground up for accessibility would be one of the first in the nation. And it was just a really inspiring presentation about what accessible first design can look like in Parks and Rec. And I just really appreciated hearing about it. It was a very thoughtful presentation. They weren't asking for anything that the city already wouldn't have committed. They're taking on a lot of the onus of all the rest of the fundraising and design and stuff like that. So I thought it was a really great vision, and hope we can incorporate some more of that in our own process here too.
Thanks for attending that.
Yeah. Yep. And David did as well.
I just had one. We have a lot of, this comes up I stay home with my kids on Friday, so we're always looking for something to do. And you have a 5 and 3-year-old sitting in your house isn't always a great thing for 8 hours a day. So we take advantage of a lot of the great parks in the city of Chaska. But the one thing that I would like to continue to explore, and maybe this is in the 2040 comprehensive plan, you know, other than a small, probably needs to be upgraded indoor play structure at the community center, I forget what it's called, the ball pit, right?
The playground?
Playground. We don't really have a great indoor play structure for kids. You know, and I think there's been some conversations about making some upgrades to that space. So I just bring it up because sometimes you do what your kids want, where they want to go and where they've done birthday parties, and sometimes that does involve leaving the city of Chaska, which I wish I wouldn't have to ever do. So I think it'd be great to kind of have those conversations. Again, it's just something that, you know, we have a lot of great outdoor parks, and winter happens in Minnesota for 10 months of the year. Yeah, maybe 9 months. But also it gets really hot sometimes too, and sometimes with kids, they just wear down, and so that kind of indoor thing would be great too. They enjoy the ball pit, but you know, it'd be interesting to see a kind of a structure improvement, and I don't know where that is or anything, but just throwing that out there because it comes up every time a Friday rolls around, and I ask my kids what they want to do, and sometimes we explore other places, which is okay too, because you learn a lot and you get good ideas too. So that's all I have.
I'm good.
Well, the one thing I have is Monday I was able to attend the wayfinding and signage meeting, and I thought it was a great meeting. I know the different commissions were all invited, and mainly planning commission members, but there was someone from the historical commission, and what I was really pleased about is a lot of the AOAs seem to live in Jonathan for some reason. And they often tell me about how they got lost on the trails. And I lived in Jonathan when I first moved to town, and I got lost on the trails. So I think that signage is really important, and I think that things are really moving in the right direction in that area.
I would agree with that wholeheartedly. When I first moved here, I went running on the trails a couple times, and if it wasn't for my app, I would not have found my way back home. I think I'd probably still be out there.
See, and that's one of the reasons why I enjoy it.
Because you can get lost.
Yeah. I'm running and I have no idea where I'm at. Maybe I should go this way, maybe I should go, that's just part of it.
That 3-mile run turns into a marathon all of a sudden.
Yeah.
You gotta get back to where you started.
Or a half mile, you know.
Well, I took my dog a few times, and I got so lost, I ended up carrying her home. Luckily, she was 12 pounds.
Good, thank you for attending.
It was a good meeting.
That brings us to agenda item 10, adjourned meeting.
I move we adjourn?
You just want me to say your last name?
I do. I'm gonna make you say it like
Commissioner
3 times.
Mihailov
Very good.
has a motion for adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by, just blanked on your name, Commissioner Brandt, sorry. All in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. We are adjourned. call the order of the Chaska Park Board meeting on it's not May 14th, June 11th, 2018, approximately 7:02. We have a roll call. Would you please lead us through a roll call?
Jonathan Grau,
Here?
David Roan,
Here.
David Downs, Ernesto Ruiz Gutierrez,
Here.
Joshua Ives, Lauren Mahalov,
Here.
Nicholas Mason, Patricia Whitrock,
Here,
Sean Olson,
Here.
Jason Branch,
Here.
Michael Flaherty Wilcox.
Here.